Did Ahsoka live up to the hype? Let's find out right now.
Fire upon them.
The battle's not over yet.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Before we get into the video, make sure you leave a like. It helps a lot. But this is going to be a big like spoiler in-depth review of the Ahsoka series as a whole. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it, and I will be ranking the episodes at the end of the video. But Ahsoka basically revolved around Ahsoka Tano investigating an emerging threat to the galaxy alongside her rebel friends. So I just want to get this off the bat. I really did enjoy this show a lot. Like, I was expecting to really like it, but I really came out of it liking it more than people I follow on Twitter. Like, some people were really hating the final episode, but I really loved the final episode. I loved the whole entire journey we were on, the fan service of everything. I thought there was like a decent amount of fan service, but I think it worked for the show that I was watching and all the characters that I was watching, because they all had their different developments from the Clone Wars and from Rebels, and I think it all worked. And let me just say, if we get a season 2, I'm hyped, because this show will lead into like a season 2 or the, Dave Filoni's movie. They have to do a season 2 before Dave Filoni's movie, because there's just too much to really fix and too much to do before his movie, because you got to get all the characters together again. Because at the end of the season finale, we have basically Ahsoka and Sabine are trapped in the other galaxy, while Thrawn and Ezra made it out. So it's kind of like the opposite of where we started in the show, which I kind of like. You know, it's set up for season 2, but it ended kind of like the story of Ezra and Thrawn, because they got back to the normal Star Wars galaxy that we know and loved. So I really enjoyed the show, and I love the journey that we were on. It was 8 episodes long. It's better than the 6-episode format that Marvel does, but we'll see how that works out with Loki, because it's coming out this week. But yeah, I think the 8 episodes really did work. All the episodes were actually pretty long too. I think there's only maybe 1 or 2 episodes that were under 40 minutes, and I think 40 minutes to 45 minutes is a perfect length for these episodes. I think it works a lot. The only thing I would have fixed was maybe even add more episodes, because I wanted to spend more time with all these characters: Sabine, Ezra, Ahsoka, Shin, Hati, and then Baylan. Bro, I wanted to spend so much more time with these characters. I started to just love the live action versions of them, because they're from like animated shows, you know. Ahsoka is normally from an animated show. Sabine, Ezra, they're from Rebels, animated shows. And that's what I want to talk about, Rebels and Clone Wars. So I never really watched Rebels or Clone Wars before the show came out, but before the show came out in August, I binged all of Rebels, and I watched the last season of Clone Wars. Not all of Clone Wars, because it's a really long show. But let me just say, I absolutely loved Rebels. It's such a good show. And like, it's a kid's show, but it has like a lot of adult moments and adult themes in it, because there's a lot of emotional moments in that show. But I love the action in that show. I thought Dave Filoni did a great job in creating that. And the final couple episodes of the Clone Wars were absolutely stunning. Some of the best Star Wars content that you can get. And I thought that really prepared me to watch Ahsoka. And I was actually really happy that I did all that before watching this, because if I hadn't seen Rebels or Clone Wars, I wouldn't really have like an emotional attachment to these characters like Ezra, Thrawn, Sabine, Hera, and even Ahsoka herself, because Ahsoka is just in Clone Wars and she's in some of Rebels. So I wouldn't really have known any of these characters or really cared about them when they did pop up, like the episodes where Ezra did pop up. But even if I didn't watch Rebels or Clone Wars, I would have really gotten hyped at the scene where Anakin comes back, Hayden Christensen, because we've all seen Revenge of the Sith. We all know Hayden Christensen. He showed up in Obi-Wan, which I thought was really disappointing, but when he showed up here, I was absolutely hyped. And that episode really, really got me so happy. I love that episode. I thought Dave Filoni did such a great job. And that's kind of like fan service that I think was really well done. A lot of people kind of didn't like it or didn't like the storyline, but I liked it a lot, because we got to see Ahsoka's past. Ariana Greenblatt, she's having a great year, except 65. That movie wasn't great, but I thought she was having a great year, and her playing young Ahsoka was really cool. That kind of scene just wanted me, like, it made me want like a young Clone Wars show that we already got in an animated version, but it made me want it in like a live action version with Obi-Wan and Anakin and young Ahsoka in live action. That would have been so cool to have that. I would have loved it so much. And then you have those scenes on that episode where Anakin kind of like flashes into Darth Vader. That was so hype. I loved it so much. I just love that subtle hint. It's so cool. I absolutely loved when Hayden Christensen showed up here, and when Ezra showed up. I loved it. But let's take a dive into our cast. We have like 7 people to go over, so I probably will only spend a little bit of time on each person. But let's bring up Ahsoka first. This is like her show. I kind of find it funny how this show is called Ahsoka, but she has to really share the spotlight with so many other characters. That's why I think Dave Filoni was correct when he called this like Rebels Season 5, because it basically is Rebels, because Ahsoka was in Rebels. Now she's in this, but she's a more prominent figure in this show with a lot of supporting characters. But Rosario Dawson, she of course plays Ahsoka. You know, sometimes I feel like Rosario Dawson's performance is a little bit off as Ahsoka, but that might just be the direction that she's given or the script. I thought the script was kind of weak in this show. That's the one thing that I really would have fixed for this to have been like an Andor level show, because I still have Andor over this. But I think Rosario Dawson, I think she's getting a lot better as Ahsoka. I think she has the look down with all the prosthetics on her. She's great, especially when she was wearing the white. Oh my gosh, it looks beautiful. Ahsoka in live action never looked better. And I think Rosario Dawson, as I said, I think she's given a great performance. I just don't think the script is that great for her, so I just wish that was a little bit better. But I think Rosario Dawson gave a pretty good performance. I wouldn't really ask anything more of her. Maybe the script I think was a little different, because Ahsoka, I remembered from the animated series, she was a lot happier, a lot like she had more personality. I thought that Ahsoka in this show didn't really have a lot of personality, so I might have just fixed that a little bit. That would have been my one gripe with it. Hayden Christensen back as Anakin. I already talked about that a little bit, but it's absolutely amazing to have him back. I really just love to see him back, you know, because him and Ahsoka, it just was that little bond that they had in Clone Wars, you know, the Padawan and the Master, seeing them back together fighting was really cool. And I didn't like how they left Anakin in the Obi-Wan show. I didn't like that. I really thought that Obi-Wan was a massive step down for Star Wars and how they treated Anakin, Hayden Christensen, because they were like hyping him up. They were like, Hayden Christensen back as Anakin, Darth Vader, and Obi-Wan. And I'm like, I watched the show and he's hardly even in it. And like, you could tell when he's in the Darth Vader costume, maybe that's not even him on set. Like, come on. But you could really see this is literally him on set because he's playing Anakin. He's not really playing Darth Vader. He's playing Anakin. You can see the Force Ghost on the season finale. That's Anakin. That's Hayden Christensen. That's the one we love in his iconic costume. It's so good. That's the kind of fan service that I love. If you can just make every fan happy and make me happy in that moment, then I'm fine with it. And if it's not overdone, then I'm fine with it. And Sabine, played by Natasha Leo Bordizzo, I'm only familiar with her in 2 other projects, and one project is the project with Daniel Radcliffe, which is a pretty awesome project if you guys want to go check it out. I forget the name, but I think that she did great as Sabine. You know, when we saw in the first episode, she had like the long hair, but Sabine is known for the shorter hair and she cut it off. I wish Sabine actually would have kept the long hair. I really like her. I liked her with the long hair, but I don't think that would have worked with her mask on, because she is a Mandalorian and she got to wear the mask, so that doesn't really work. But I thought she looked great with the long hair, and I love the introduction to her character. She just lives as a rebel, man. She is a rebel in and out. And I loved her character development, and I loved how they dug into like how she was the apprentice to Ahsoka in this kind of series, and she is kind of like force sensitive, because you know, some people in the Star Wars universe are force sensitive. Some people have even said that everyone is kind of force sensitive in the Star Wars universe. I don't really know how that works, but seeing Sabine actually learn how to use the Force with Ahsoka teaching her was absolutely amazing. We even saw her use a lightsaber. I loved seeing her actually wield a lightsaber. A Mandalorian wielding a lightsaber was awesome, because she also wielded the Darksaber in the Rebels show, so that was cool. So she kind of already had the skill down, but she got to use a lightsaber even more. I guess she kind of owns Ezra's lightsaber now, because Ezra did make a new lightsaber, so I guess she owns Ezra's lightsaber, which is kind of sick. And I was wondering if they were going to dig more into the Ezra and Sabine kind of like friendship romance. I'm still not sure if they're going to go for a romance later on in this universe, or they're going to just stick it as a good friendship, because you do see those hints in the Rebels show. I don't really know if you saw any hints in this one. You guys got to leave that down below if you think they're really going to go into that romance with them. You can't really right now until they reunite again. But I don't know. I would like to see a romance between them, but I don't know if they're really going down that route right now. But I do say that Natasha Leo Bordizzo, she gave a great performance as Sabine, and I can't wait to see her again. Hera, who was played on Mary Elizabeth Winstead, was probably the one person that I thought was a little miscast. I wasn't really digging her performance as Hera, and you know, I kind of came around to her in those final episodes, but it took me a little bit. but maybe I think that she was just a little miscast in this role. But I did like her down the stretch of it, and I did like seeing Hera and her son finally, because we saw her son in live action. That was awesome. See Chopper. Chopper is always a menace in the Rebel show, and he was also a menace here. He's a very interesting robot. I always love the robots in the Star Wars universe. And Hu Yang, another robot. I love Hu Yang. He was voiced by one of the doctors. I forget, David Tennant. He was voiced by David Tennant. David Tennant was amazing. Had some great humorous moments. Hu Yang was also kind of a menace because he was just joking around all the time, but he did have some heart. I loved his supporting little character, because I think that they always like do a great job, an A+ kind of job on the robots in the Star Wars universe. Even if they don't talk, I think the robots make some funny like noises, so I really like how they work with the robots in the Star Wars show. And then we had Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll, played by Ivana Sakno and Ray Stevenson. I just want to say rest in peace to Ray Stevenson. He's no longer with us, so we won't get to see where Baylan's character goes, which is really disappointing, because Baylan's character at the end, you know, he's going on this big journey, and we're going to see where he was going with season 2. But since Ray Stevenson sadly passed away, I don't think they're going to continue that, which is fine. With Shin, I'm not sure if she had an ending in this show, or they're going to continue with her, because she did basically Baylan and Shin kind of departed ways. You know, Baylan's going one way, Shin's going another way. She went to go find a purpose, kind of, and she kind of like found her people to lead in the end of this. So I'm wondering if that's where they're going to leave her, or she's going to like build an army with those people. I'm not sure, but I really did love these two characters, because you kind of like enter the episode with these two characters entering that one ship, and amazing score behind those two characters in that one attack scene. And I love them as villains. If this show was just them two as the villains and not Thrawn, I think it would have been even better, because these two people were amazing. I thought they had great performances. I was so surprised with how cool they were, how menacing they were as villains. And I would love to get more Shin Hati. She was really cool, and she was just crazy. Like, she was a crazy villain, a crazy character, really striking character also. Her facial performances were great in this. I just really loved her character, even though she was a villain. I thought she gave a great performance. And Thrawn, played by Lars Mikkelsen, who also did the voice for him in the Rebels series. So kind of cool that he got to come back and do the live action. He's the only one who actually made a return from doing the voice, because he's the only one who did a voice and did return. And I think he did a great job. I think that Thrawn, though, was a little underutilized as like the main villain, and he wasn't really that much of a threat, because you do see him in Rebels. He's like a really smart threat. He knows what he's doing, and he has all these plans down, and then he basically defeats everyone that he kind of like goes against, except in the final episode of Rebels he gets taken with Ezra. But in this, I felt like he wasn't as threatening as I really wanted him to be, but maybe that's because he was in a different galaxy for so long. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing, but he did have this cool army of clone troopers that looked absolutely like they were kind of like from the Roman Empire, kind of looked like them, and they were really menacing, really cool, and they had like witches kind of like giving them sorcery powers, and they were like kind of turning into zombies too. Like the witches had some magic going on with them. Like this kind of turned into like a witch show with some magic going on with the clone troopers. I thought that was a really interesting touch that they did with the show, and I really liked that. But I thought that Thrawn was a little underutilized, and you know, I wanted Thrawn to be more menacing, because you have him coming back in live action. He should be really menacing in live action. And I thought that Lars Mikkelsen's performance was fine. I thought the writing around him just wasn't great. And Ezra, of course, came back, played by Iman Esfanti, which I thought he did a fantastic job. Probably one of my best performances on this show. It's because, you know, Ezra just has a great personality on Rebels, so I was worried if anyone could really capture that personality. And I thought Iman did a great job. He really just had all this charisma with him and all this humor, and I thought he really got past the kind of like bad and weak script, in my opinion, and just really brought a lot of heart to this show, because you see him on screen, he's already smiling, he's already talking to Sabine like no time has passed. I really loved his performance. Even though I hated his facial hair. Like, I wish he just shaved that off in that first episode that you saw him, because we don't really see Ezra in the Rebel show with facial hair, so it was so weird to see him, but he has been off planet. But hopefully in this next season he shaves the facial hair, because we don't want that on Ezra. I just don't think it fits the character. He just kind of looks like an old man. but I love seeing him back after binging Rebels. He's such a cool character, one of the best Jedi, I think, in my opinion, because he just has so much charisma. He's so likable, and in the Rebel show, he did fight kind of with the dark side, like with Maul, so he kind of like almost joined the dark side, but he's back on the light side. So I thought that kind of storyline was cool in the Rebel show. But seeing him here, it's so cool to just see these characters in live action, and they're actually done right. I mean, the script kind of is weak for these characters, but I thought they just brought some great charisma to the show. And Ezra got a new lightsaber and everything, and it kind of, my little gripe with him, it took him a while to get the lightsaber and actually start fighting, because Sabine had his lightsaber. So in episode 7, I think it was, he kind of just used the Force and ran around just pushing people around. I thought that was funny, but I was waiting. In episode 8, we finally got the scenes with him with his new lightsaber they just built. He got a blue one now because Sabine's got his green one, and he was doing some work with that lightsaber. I absolutely love seeing him with that, and I can't wait to see more of him with the lightsaber. And we got to see him reunite with Hera on the ship at the end of the season finale, and he actually came out as a clone trooper, and we all know that he loves to wear the clone troopers helmets in Rebels, so it was cool to wear those. So I absolutely loved Ezra, and I thought all the cast did a great job. I thought the script kind of made it hard for the cast to do a great job, but I all thought they brought some real heart to these roles and tried really hard, and I absolutely loved basically every one of these characters. If I was to rank them, I don't know, I'd have Shin, Hati, and Baylan's Skull probably at number 1, Ezra at 2, Sabine, and then Ahsoka, because I thought she was a little underutilized for the show, and then Thrawn, and then probably Hera after that. I thought they were all great, though. All the actors did a great job. I do want to take a minute, though, and talk about the fight scenes, because I thought the fight scenes were actually pretty unique here. Because, you know, Star Wars has been lacking a little bit on the fight scenes, because Obi-Wan had some, let's say, interesting fight scenes, and there weren't a lot of them in the show. And the sequel trilogy, I thought the sequel trilogy's action scenes were, the lightsaber action scenes were kind of weak. You know, there wasn't a lot of them in the sequel trilogy, so I was really disappointed with that. But the prequel trilogy is where lightsabers kind of shine. You know, that's where that got the most kind of out of the lightsabers. They did the most moves, because you remember on Mustafar and Revenge of the Sith, you see Anakin and Obi-Wan just flinging their lightsabers around, doing those swings in the circle. They really got the lightsabers down in the prequel trilogy, and I don't think the lightsabers have really gotten past that moment. Maybe in the animated shows, because Rebels has some really good uses of a lightsaber, but that's of course animation. You can do so much more there. But I think Revenge of the Sith and all the prequel movies have the best use of a lightsaber, best movement, and kind of like best sounds. And you do see in this show, I think they changed up the lightsabers a little bit. They look a little different. I kind of am coming around to the look of these. I wonder if they're going to keep them for the new movies and stuff like that. So I am getting around. But I thought that the lightsaber scenes and the fight scenes in particular here were really good. It's some of the best I've seen probably since the prequel trilogy and the animated shows. I don't know if that's because they got a different like choreographer for these fights, or maybe they're going for a different thing, because I kind of saw some samurai resemblance with these lightsaber fights, which I thought was really cool, because you kind of see they're kind of slower than the prequel fights, but I thought like the moves have more precision. They're kind of calculating these moves in more like an articulate way, like samurai way. So I really love that. I love what they're doing here, and I really like how everyone with the lightsaber was really trying to make the best decision for it, except kind of like Sabine in the first couple episodes, because she didn't really know how to use it when she was fighting Shin Hati. So I really absolutely loved this kind of like new technique that they're going with here. I don't know if that's Dave Filoni's idea or someone else, but kind of like the samurai lightsaber technique, I guess what I call it, is really awesome, and I hope we see more of it. All right, now we're going to rank the episodes. I'm just going to say the episode. I don't know if I'll have the full details down for the episodes, because it's been 8 weeks. Kind of hard for me to remember what happened in every single episode, the articulate details. But in last place comes episode 2. I thought episode 2 was kind of like a filler episode, because the only kind of big thing I remember from this episode was when Ahsoka and Hera go to this one planet, and you see all these workers kind of like turn on them and fight them. And this is where you have that one kind of evil threat that we thought was going to be really big for the show, but he kind of died off because he was like from like the witch's magic. I do forget his name, but he was like a weird Sith from like, he was made out of smoke too. That was the one big scene in this, but I thought episode 2 was kind of weak. I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. Episode 3 next. Episode 3 was actually a lot better, because you got to see a lot of Sabine and Ahsoka interact, and you got to see Hera talk to the council. I thought that one was actually pretty cool. I will say, for all these episodes, I did like all the episodes. It's just some of them are a lot greater, some of them are amazing, and some of them are just good and decent kind of, but I did still like them. I didn't hate or didn't dislike any of these episodes. Episode 1 comes in 6th place. It's the intro to the show. We got to see all the characters in live action for the first time. Ahsoka, Sabine on her planet was cool. I told you I absolutely love her look with the long hair. Loved it so much. I love the introduction of the show and how they treated every single character. And you had Shin, Hati, and Baylan school in that opening scene. That was so badass with that score. I watched that first scene a lot of times because that score was crazy. Episode 7 comes next. I actually liked this episode a decent bit. I thought it just didn't progress the show much, and it just left the finale to do so much. I thought they could have pushed in a couple more things into this episode, but I thought it was awesome to see. Basically, this is where the trio reunited with Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine, and you got to see Ezra just running around and just push everyone around with the Force. I thought that was actually hilarious. Then in 4th place, we had the finale, episode 8. I really did love this show. From like the top 4 episodes of the show, I really do love. I love this one a little bit less because it's kind of like mostly a setup. Doesn't really end a lot of stories except really Ezra and Thrawn, but they still got to do stuff. So it really does set up a lot of stuff with these characters. Baylan Skoll, Shin Hati, Ezra, you're going to set him up to really try to go find Ahsoka and Sabine. They got to go back to the other galaxy. I'm not sure how they're going to go back to this galaxy and get Ahsoka and Sabine, but they're still probably going to come home. I doubt Dave Filoni's going to leave them on that planet, but they're probably going to come home. Oh, I will say, one of the things that I wish this show had was Zeb. We've been missing Zeb. We saw him in The Mandalorian, but he wasn't in the show. Hopefully he comes back in season 2, reunites with Ezra. Oh, I love their friendship. They're kind of like interesting friendship that they had. I loved it. So hopefully we get to see Zeb in season 2. Episode 4 comes next. This was where Ahsoka and Sabine were on the planet, and this is where Ahsoka kind of like dies at the end. I guess you would say she kind of fake dies because we see her again. She's kind of just in that distant land, and this is where I really love the lightsaber fights because you kind of saw the samurai techniques that they were doing. You got to see 2 big fight scenes, and my favorite one was probably Sabine versus Shin Hati. That fight scene was epic. I really did love the fights in this episode. My second favorite episode was episode 6, when you finally get to that new galaxy and you see Thrawn for the first time and you see Ezra for the first time. Such an amazing episode. This was like this episode was like made for Rebels fans because you got to see each character that we haven't seen in so many years, that we've been missing for so long, and it was so cool. You got to see Thrawn's whole fleet come in, his clone troopers. Oh, I loved it so much. You got to see action. You got to have some really interesting dialogue in this episode. You got to see kind of like a new planet go around. You got to see kind of like these, I don't know what they were, like frog creatures with that Ezra was hanging out with. I really did enjoy this episode. I thought it worked a lot, and it really just brought a lot of love to my heart to see these characters just return, and they were in live action. It was really cool, but my favorite episode had to be episode 5, Ahsoka Confronts Her Past. This episode was so amazing. Some of the best Star Wars content I think I've ever seen. One of my favorite episodes of Star Wars like television, because we got to see Ahsoka and Hayden Christensen kind of in the Clone Wars. Young Ahsoka, Ariana Greenblatt, she did amazing as young Ahsoka. Hayden Christensen in the iconic kind of Clone Wars outfit. It was so cool. And you got to see Rex also, the clone troopers. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to go back to that episode in so many years and just think, how are we so lucky to get this episode of Star Wars? Because you saw, when this came out, you saw everyone on the internet just losing their minds seeing this episode, seeing Hayden Christensen back again in like his Revenge of the Sith kind of look. And you got to see flashes of Darth Vader, you know, him turning to the dark side and all that. It just was awesome. And you got to see Hera and her allies kind of take on a rescue mission for people. Got to see her son. I absolutely loved it. You know, this episode, I would have taken like another hour of this episode just to get more flashbacks with these characters. It was so cool. And as I said, one of the best kind of moments in Star Wars history, just seeing Ahsoka and Anakin in live action together. I will never forget the moment when I watched that episode. It was so hyped. I just couldn't wait to see it, and it really just met all my expectations. Seeing Anakin back again, it really made up for what they did with him in Obi-Wan. I loved it. So yeah, episode 5, my favorite episode of the show. Leave your ranking down below. But overall, Ahsoka made me really happy after kind of like the Mandalorian's excruciating season 3 finale. And season 3 as a whole of Mandalorian just wasn't great. I wasn't digging it. And the more I think about it, the more I don't like it. So it was kind of hard for Star Wars fans because you only had that season and this season for this year's kind of Star Wars content. And this show made me so happy, especially because I binged Rebels before it. I just had a lot of laughs with this show. I really had a lot of tense moments. And I loved seeing these characters in live action for the first time. And I can't wait to see what they do with the season 2 Dave Filoni's movie. I feel like this kind of trilogy of this season, next season of Ahsoka, which hopefully they make, and Dave Filoni's movie will be some of the coolest Star Wars content that we had. I think a lot of people get on Dave Filoni for fan service, but I really do enjoy how he does fan service. Maybe that's just my opinion, because I did enjoy episode 8, but I do enjoy how he does it, and I enjoyed the fight scenes of this show, the callbacks, the samurai techniques with the lightsabers, seeing Ezra, Thrawn, seeing how they kind of ended it on a cliffhanger so we can kind of like think of where they're going to take it. I just can't wait. It kind of feels like Star Wars is back, but we're really going to have to wait for these movies because, you know, we haven't had a Star Wars movie in a long time. It's always been TV shows for like the last 3 to 4 years. So I can't wait to see where they take this season. But overall, I think Ahsoka was a great show. Loved a lot of moments. Script was a little weak. So I'm going to give Ahsoka an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed a lot of parts of this show, and I enjoyed every episode. There's not one that I disliked. So leave your thoughts down below on Ahsoka. If you've seen it, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.